How's it going, guys? So obviously the reason you're watching this video is probably because you're a furry. Either that or you're just here to look at furry cringe. But anyway, you've probably seen quite a few furry movies, and there are a bunch of different furry movies out there from a bunch of different companies and studios that make these movies. So in this video, I wanted to list off my top 5 worst furry movies and top 5 best furry movies. And I know this has been done before, but I kind of wanted to show you guys my own opinion on the topic. And I'm going to set my own rules here before we get started. Since there are so many movies that have been made out there over all the years by different studios, and there's hundreds of thousands of movies, everything from really low budget animated movies to World War II propaganda films, stuff like that. So it'd be almost impossible to find the best furry movie out there. There's probably one lurking in the shadows that nobody's ever seen before. So it'd be kind of hard if I didn't pick from a list of well-known studios. So I had to set a rule only for my worst list. I can only pick movies from Disney, DreamWorks, Blue Sky Studios, and Sony Animation Studios. For my best list, I can pick out of any movies I want because unfortunately it's way easier to find the top 5 worst movies than it is to find the top 5 best movies. So let's go ahead and start off with our top 5 worst furry movies ever made. Home on the Range is a movie made by Disney Animation Studios in 2004. The story is about 3 cows who go on a quest to save their home from being taken away. Now, this movie is obviously on my last list, so it is the one I hate the least on this list. But this movie is just boring. It feels like it goes on forever, and it's really weird, I guess. And the last thing is, it's one of the last 2D animated movies made by Disney, so I don't really know if this was a good note to leave off on with the Disney movie, because it's really not that good. And the next movie is Rio 2. And guess what? This movie isn't very good either. And I know the first movie wasn't the best movie either, but this movie is terrible. This movie has way too many characters, it's confusing, and it's just not a good movie. You know when you have a really good movie come out and then you want to see the sequel because you think the sequel will also be really good, but when you actually see the sequel you wish you hadn't? That's kind of what this movie is. Now we have Chicken Little. There isn't really much to say about this movie. Chicken Little's dad is a terrible father. The whole town hates Chicken Little. And if you haven't seen this movie, you should watch it and you'll see what I'm kind of talking about. It's also just a weird movie, and I think it deserves a spot on this list. In the number 2 spot, we have Shark Tale, and this is a 2004 movie from DreamWorks. Now, this movie is just really weird and hard to watch. And it's also strange because I remember this being one of the movies I liked to watch as a child. But my biggest concern for this movie is that the budget for it was $75 million. So with this movie, they don't even really have an excuse for it being a bad movie. It really should have been a good movie. And it also has really weird animation. Like the characters' faces are somehow, like they look like real humans' faces, I guess. Is how you could call it. It's just really strange looking. And in first place is Open Season. Now this movie is bad, it's not funny, and it's like every other kids movie ever made. And it also had a budget of $85 million. So I don't even know what else to say about this movie. It's just number 1 on my worst list. It's the worst movie. Now let's steer away from the bad movies and let's look at the good movies. I need to get the thoughts of Open Season and Shark Tale out of my head. So for my number 5 spot, I had a really hard time choosing between the movie Balto and the movie Zootopia, because you can't really have a furry movie list without the movie Zootopia on there. But in all seriousness, I think what I'm going to choose for number 5 is Zootopia, with Balto being a really close second behind it. So I chose Zootopia because that was the movie that really got me into the fandom, I think, because I had already heard about the fandom, and then I went to watch this movie and it got me more interested in the fandom itself. This movie's really good. It has good likable characters, good morals. I mean, maybe I'd be better off if this movie never existed, but overall I think it's a pretty good movie. Next up, I also had a really hard time choosing between 2 movies for this spot, so I just decided to put 2 movies in one spot, if I'm allowed to do that. I chose the original Disney versions of Robin Hood and The Jungle Book. And I really like these movies, but I was really surprised when I looked up Robin Hood on Rotten Tomatoes how low of a rating it had. And really, this movie shouldn't have this close of a rating to open season. And then when I looked up The Jungle Book on Rotten Tomatoes, I got a more reasonable score on there. So I just chose these movies because they're good movies, they're classics, they have good soundtracks, and they're just really nostalgic to me.
They're getting better, you know. You've got to admit it. They are getting better.
Next up, we have Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. And this is one of a couple of Wes Anderson's list of animated animal movies that he's made. And spoiler alert, there may be another one on this list. But anyway, this movie is amazing. It has good meaning, good plot. It has amazing animation and even a good soundtrack. I really like the use of the song I Won't Hurt You in this movie.
An untouched diamond that's golden and brilliant without illumination.
So this movie was really great and I enjoyed watching it. Next on the list, we have one of the movies you think of when you think of the best Disney movies of all time. And that movie is The Lion King. This movie has a great plot, very nostalgic, has a great soundtrack, like songs that will get stuck in your head for days if you watch it. And really, if you haven't watched The Lion King, you're probably literally living under a rock, because pretty much everyone's seen The Lion King. And the last movie I have for you on this list today is Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now, this movie is a masterpiece. It has great plot, great meaning, just like Isle of Dogs did. And it also, like Isle of Dogs, has a great soundtrack to it. And in this movie, the animation may not be as strong as Isle of Dogs, but when you have so many other things in this movie that make it up, like the voice acting and just the detail put into it, it makes up for it. So that's all I have for this list today. If you have any movies that should have been on this list but weren't, please tell me in the comments, because I'd really like to get some more movies on my radar that maybe I haven't seen the movies you recommend to me. So if you have some movies that you don't think I've seen, or movies that should have belonged on this list, then please tell me, and I will see you guys in another video.
What a beautiful creature. Wish him luck, boys.
Luck to you.
Good luck. Good luck out.
I've lost all of my pride. I've been to paradise and out the other side, with no one to guide me, torn apart by a fiery wheel inside me.